What's your lemonade stand story?
And he was like, YouTube's going to be the next big thing, Devin. Like, you need to get on that. You need to get on it early. And I'm like,
And all of us, we all go through our own trials, our own level of stuff.
Sure hope this works out. Otherwise, this will be a huge waste of time.
I mean, what else is it all about other than just taking risks and continuing to try and grow and hopefully get better and better at making things?
Most of the billion-dollar brands you've seen were started by people that were just solving a problem for themselves.
We're telling lemonade stand stories from some of the world's top creators, makers, and go-getters.
We're rolling right now.
Hey,
We're having fun. We're rolling.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this podcast today is sponsored by Yalla, a task management and team collaboration software that we use at Lemonade Stand. We use Yalla to keep all of our team members organized, wherever they are. In fact, we used it to plan and organize this podcast. Visit yalla.team, that's YALLA.team, and try it for free. We also have a special offer for all listeners of this podcast. Use promo code LEMONADE and get a lifetime 25% off if you upgrade. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Charan Prabhakar with the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast, and here today sits a very, very special man right across from me. I have to brag a little bit about him. I know he said, I don't want to talk about me, so he won't, but I will. It was crazy. So across from me sits Rex Rian, who is the author of some incredible books, and I don't say that lightly. I love these books. So what happened with me was I was having all these like really cool, amazing spiritual experiences, and I couldn't really explain them. I just knew I felt like there were things that were happening inside of me, things that were changing. I was having all these dreams. I'm like, what's going on? And I have a buddy named John, and I was asking John, I'm like, John, I'm having these things happen. What do you make of it? He's like, Charan, you need to read Gold and Sapphire. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And at the time I was like, I wasn't even sure if that was a book. I thought that might've been like some sort of Sanskrit something or other. But he's like, no, Gold and Sapphire is a book and you've got to read this book. And I remember like picking it up and I'm like, oh, well, it's the third book in this series. Is that going to work? And he's like, yeah, it's fine. Just go for it. And I thought it might be like some sort of self-help book or something, but it was a narrative. It was a narrative storybook, but then it had all these like really cool principles. And I remember resonating it with it so intensely like powerful. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. And it was almost like I had a thought of this happening and the next chapter was talking about that exact thing happening, right? So anyway, I finished it and I saw Rex Ryan's name. I'm like, I've got to contact Rex. I don't even know who he is. I don't even care if he like hangs up on me. And I found his website. I called him. And long story short, we met up. We had some wonderful conversations. And now Rex has become my mentor of sorts. And so I was like so thrilled that he would come down. And so Rex, thank you so much for coming out. Yeah, this has been awesome. And I just love, so here's the thing. I have, I believe in the power of therapy and the power of all those different things, different modalities to help get you to be in a better place and stuff. But sometimes when you don't resonate with something, it's hard to connect, right? You just don't feel that power. But I remember when I read your books, I could not put them down because they spoke so much truth to me. So I want to get to know you, and I want the audience to get to know you a little bit more. But Rex, tell me about yourself. Like, how did you come up with all of these stories, and what was the inspiration for all of this?
Oh, wow. There's a lot to that. Basically, the inspiration for the stories was I wasn't even going to write a book. I'm not really an author.
Yeah.
So my story is I grew up regular life.
Yeah.
I got a job as a financial analyst for 10 years. I wasn't fulfilling my purpose and mission in that.
And I remember when you were doing that, we were talking about this, you didn't feel truly alive.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So why did you do that? Why was that your path in the beginning?
Well, I had gone to college, and it's like, do the thing, you go to school, you get married, you have a family, you live in a box, and everything was just like this rigid lifestyle. Yeah. And it wasn't fulfilling. I did that for a while because I had to, and I thought that was the way you're supposed to do it.
Right.
And after a few years of that, I was like, wait a minute, I'm not on my path. I'm not being genuine. I'm not being authentic.
Yeah.
I'm not fulfilling my life purpose and mission. I had no idea what it even was. And
yeah, isn't that sad? Because so many people do that.
Yeah.
And they're still stuck in that space where they're like, well, we're supposed to do this, so we do this.
And they don't know anything different. And so then they get stuck in there and they'll live their whole life still stuck in that limiting, rigid belief system.
Right.
And after about 8 or 9 years, I had a significant experience. Maybe we can talk about it.
Yeah.
And it started changing my life, and I got more onto my life path and what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And it's taken a long time, but eventually I was like, how can I help people? And I was working with individuals and small groups and teaching little classes. But eventually it's like, how can I help more people?
Yeah.
And the idea started coming to me, write it in a book. And I thought, well, I'm not an author. And so I don't know enough about writing to make an entertaining book. So I thought, well, just maybe a self-help book. I'll put a few of these principles down. That'll be the end of it. Oh no, it started coming, and it just like poured in, usually about 4 a.m.
Yeah.
It would start coming. And like, well, there's a story, and there's a story to it.
Yeah.
And it starts going. And it was a fictional story that carried the principles.
Yeah.
Like, I can teach these principles through this fictional story and then get it out to a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, no, and I love it because, well, one of those people was me, right? And I remember being so connected to it. And it's interesting because, like, you know, we were talking about this. There was a point during your inauthentic life, I would say, right? When the part where you're working and doing the things that you're supposed to do to be living in that box, where you got really sick.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a second.
So I'd been working as a financial analyst for about a total about 10 years.
Yeah.
And about 8 years into that, I wasn't taking care of myself. I was not eating well. I was not sleeping well. I hated my life.
Yeah.
And so I'd go to work, I'd come home, and I would just sit in front of the TV until it was way late because I was trying to avoid life. So I'd go to bed late, ate terribly, and I felt awful. And I got sick. I got mono, and it just got worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And pretty soon I couldn't even get out of bed.
Oh, wow.
But I still had to go to work because I got to provide for the family. And finally I had a near-death experience.
Yeah.
And that in that experience, I felt such a contrast in my experience. And then after that, I quit my job and I went on this journey of trying to find my purpose.
Right. Well, because the thing is, like, I remember you were telling me about that near-death experience, that it was so loving.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Right. And it was so powerful and amazing because, and a lot of people that I've talked to that have had near-death experiences say that, where it's like, it's the most, you cannot describe in words the type of love that you feel in that environment. And I remember you were having this conversation because you're like, I don't want to come back, you know, like, this is amazing, right? But it's so great because that was, like, in a sense, like your great awakening.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that after you came back after, like, the lessons that you learned while in the near-death experience, that it was actually kind of hard for you to adjust back to this life because you're like, wait, how do I make sense of all of the stuff that's kind of happening inside of me, you know? So how did that transition go?
So before, the things that led up to that, I was not happy, feeling very, very low frequency, a lot of negative emotions. And then in the experience, I felt like you said, it was so indescribable. It's just euphoric, but that doesn't even do it. Yeah. And in the experience, I was told, or it came to me, that if I would come back, I would be given the knowledge and the tools and the gifts and the ability to help heal from my stuff. And with that, I was to take that knowledge and experience and share it with other people. Yeah. And so, yeah, you're right. When I came back, I'm like, oh, this felt great. This before it felt awful. Yeah. This experience was amazing. I didn't want to come back. Yeah. But now I'm back to real life, and you got to put food on the table, and you got to live.
Yeah, do all those things.
All those things. Yeah. And I went on a journey, and so it didn't all get better in the experience. In fact, in some ways, it got worse. Yeah. And I had to kind of go through this experience, this kind of a heartbreak, broken spirit, and in that, I started learning about myself.
Okay,
and
interesting.
that was part of the journey. So healing physically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually.
Yeah.
And in that, I gained a lot of knowledge that helped me. And then I was able to use that to help other people. And that's kind of what led into
all of these books.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because there is the two main characters are Austin and Taylor, right? In these in the Golden series, and I remember like when it was funny because I read Gold and Sapphire first, but then I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and start over and read from the beginning, And as I started doing that, you start to see like this character Austin get really broken from his old way.
Yep.
Like, do you feel like that's a kind of a connection to your own life in a sense?
Little bit, yes.
Yeah.
It seems like everybody in their own way kind of goes through their life, and they kind of get broken.
Yeah.
And then hopefully they come to a point, this kind of crescendo in their life where they're like, okay, wow, I gotta open up and be more aware of something greater outside of myself.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's so powerful. Here's the thing though, there's some people that get broken, life just breaks them down, and they just stay broken. Yeah. They choose to stay broken. What was it about you that was like, I want to make something more. I want to see something more. Like, what inspired you to get better?
It was kind of out of necessity.
Okay.
Because I having mono, you can't even get out of bed in the morning. Yeah. And just to survive and get by from one day to the next, and bless my heart, bless her, my wife's heart.
Yeah.
She really is a trooper. She stayed with me and helped take care of the family and everything. And so while she was doing that and being very supportive, I was able to start healing and going through a process, and I still had to like, okay, you got to make money to get by, but at the same time learning and healing.
Yeah.
So it's quite a journey. One of the big things about all the books is almost all the experiences, even though it's a fictional story, it's not all fictional.
No.
About 90% of the events that have happened in the book to the characters, Austin, Taylor, Nicholas, or Vivian, whatever, are actually true.
Yeah.
From my own firsthand experiences or what I've seen in other people.
Yeah.
And
I think that's what made it so cool, because like even when I was reading it, I was like, I feel like a massive connection here, right?
You saw that, yeah.
I definitely did. That's what drew me to like reach out to you, right? Initially. So let's talk a little bit about the books. So Gold and Copper is the first book, right?
Right.
And so tell me about Gold and Copper. Like what are the main lessons that people are learning in there?
Well, there's three big issues that affect the whole world.
Okay.
And from these three issues comes all the other issues. And one of the issues is with money. One of the issues is with relationships.
Yeah.
And one of the issues is with connection to source, to God.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
So in the stories, and it kept coming to me, and the ironic thing about the whole series is it didn't come from me. All of it was inspired.
Yeah.
And so in the first book, it's Gold and Copper, Treasures in Life and Wealth.
Yeah.
The main thing in that one is addressing people's issues with money. And it's not just limited to issues with money, but it's money and what that includes.
Yeah, like the relationship they have to money itself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, it involves their purpose and mission, involves their employment, involves other aspects of their life.
Yeah.
But the lie is that money is bad. And so in the first book, Gold and Copper, we kind of address, it's a little bit behind the scenes, but we address people's relationship with money and abundance and creation and stuff like that.
Well, it's interesting. That book really resonated with me because there was a long period of time where I just didn't have the best relationship with money. Therefore, I had no money.
Yeah.
And so I remember it was like I was living in California and I was really struggling. And I was like, man, I was always chasing. I was always chasing after money, like whatever I could do. And then, I do have a good connection to my source. And I remember like praying and asking like why, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm making money the source of my life instead of him the source of my life, right? And the moment I switched that relationship and I said, nope, you are the source of my life. Money is a form of energy,
right? Yeah.
Right? Everything changed, and now it's like I've got plenty for my needs, and I think like, wow, like what a dichotomy, what a switch,
right?
So I loved it because Austin in the book is like, oh, what can I do to make more money, or what can I do this, and then to like see just switch that he kind of learns and he goes through is amazing.
Yeah, because it's like when you chase things, they run. So like you chase money and it leaves you.
Yeah.
But when you back up, it's like kind of like chasing a cat.
Yeah.
You chase a cat, it runs from you. But when you stop, it'll come to you.
Yeah.
And that's what he learned. It was more about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And then when the bigger picture lines up, then everything else lines up. So the money starts to come, and just
like that.
You experienced.
Yeah, and it was amazing. And then, so then we hopped into Golden Emerald, and that one was so interesting because, like you said, there are a lot of things regarding relationships. And, relationships are so important. Like that's like, I think the greatest source of riches in the world are relationships. And it's interesting because so much of that book deals with people's conflicts with each other. There's like so much turmoil all the time because they're bringing in their own baggage from their own life, and they have PTSD from whatever they're having. So
which is like real life.
It's totally real life, right? So how did you help like the characters deal with some of the things that they dealt with?
That one was a really funny one because a lot of the main triggers that trigger everybody, they'd take the experiences and I'd put them into a story, an experience in the story, and say, okay, what if the characters did this? What would happen in their relationships?
Yeah.
And the same thing. So there's 82 triggers that I counted in Golden Emerald. They're intentional to trigger people's stuff.
Yes.
And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But
yes. And I love that because it's like, as they're reading it, they're like, oh shoot, do I have that? And I'm like, oh my, because if it makes you feel uncomfortable, then it's something then you got to work on, right? So I love that about Golden Emerald. But Golden Sapphire, I think, is like my favorite. I mean, I love them all, but Golden Sapphire really resonated with me because that's like your connection to the divine and what that looks like. Yes. And so I was reading it, and I remember like thinking, oh my gosh, like there's like principles, like there's things like duality in there. There's I can't even like think of all the stuff, like all the meditation and what can happen to someone when they reach this higher plane where they learn about different dimensions and what they're able to kind of do, which I thought was just so fascinating because it almost seems like it's like fiction, except it's not, Yeah. So tell me a little bit about writing Golden Sapphire.
So, like I said, I don't really consider myself an author.
Sure.
So when we started with Golden Copper, it took 4 years and lots of rework, and we were struggling through it. Yeah. We finally got it done, and then we started working on Emerald. Yeah. And that only took a couple of years. Okay. But we got some help. We got some good editors and good people with the technical skills. But then by the time we got to Sapphire, we had really fleshed out a lot of the stuff, and a lot of the story. And we were able to put it in even before we started Sapphire. We had most of Sapphire done
while doing Emerald.
While doing Emerald.
That's amazing. And
if we ever came up with a snag, immediately it just like it'd come to me, do this, put this in there. So I felt I felt more inspired with Sapphire than with the other books.
I know, and I'll tell you, like all of them are great, but Sapphire definitely like struck a chord with me. Now, what I do want to make mention of is all of these books, most of these books have a co-author with you, Camille Rigby.
Yes, Camille Rigby. Yes. So she's kind of my ghostwriter. Yeah. But she was the primary author of the prequel called Knowing You. Yeah. It's a little bit of a romance. The other books are mostly self-help. Yeah. This is more story. And so she wanted to do just kind of a story about the characters 30 years earlier, the main characters, Nicholas and Vivian. Yeah. So she took that one on, and she did that one while I was doing Emerald. Yeah. And she's great. She's really, she knows writing. She has more of the technical skills, and she's wonderful. She's such a great help.
That's awesome. And it's cool that you guys have that partnership to like be able to like write all these like amazing books. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the principles in them. One of the questions that you ask all the time, well, the character Nicholas does, but I'm like, by that you are asking,
main character,
is the question, who you be? Yes. Or who be you, right? And I'm like, that grammatically doesn't even make any sense, because I would think, well, who are you? But there's a very intentional reason why you're saying who be you. Yes. And from that stems so many of the lessons, right? There's a lot of things that we talk about that Austin has to do regarding emotional clearing. And that's super important because the more you clear, the more you surrender, the more you clear, you're able to like let more light and stuff come in.
Right.
But at the core of all of that is this question, who be you? And that's something that I think about all the time, because as they're writing down who they are or who be them, I have to ask that for myself.
Exactly.
Right? So what does that mean to you? Who be you?
Well, so many people get caught up, their identity gets caught up in something, like it'll get caught up in a relationship, or it'll get caught up in a social media, something in the world.
Yes.
And then they identify with that thing, but that thing shifts and it's not really stable. So like this year it's one thing, next year it's another thing. And so people are like tossed around
like on like waves almost, you know?
And so they're always searching for their identity, but never really finding it. But when you go like, who be you? Like, who were you a billion years ago? Who are you today? Who will you be in a million years in the future?
Yeah.
And it's not what people do. It's like, okay, being a husband and father, or wife or mother, or an employee, or
because those are all just like rules. Those are like labels, right?
Yeah, but they change.
Yeah.
So who you or what you did 20 years ago and what you'll be doing 20 years in the future, that's going to be changed. That's going to be different. But who a person bees is infinite, is eternal. And that is the core person, the unchangeable person that they are. But most people have no idea.
Right.
So that's the primary focus. You have to know who you be, the eternal being that you be first. Then the other stuff will line up. Most people will chase something and then try to make it fit into who they be.
Yeah.
And so it is so foundational. If you don't have that, everything else is sketchy at best.
Well, the truth is like that is so important, because I remember like this is embarrassing, but I'll admit it, but like my dating life is like always in shambles. Not that I have drama at all. I don't really have any drama, but it's just like sometimes the women I choose to date, they're amazing women, but I know at the end of the day, even from the get-go, I'm like, this isn't gonna work. Like I just know it, but I'm like, but maybe, you know. And like I have like this battle, because it's almost like, well, I want to like find a partner, right? But what's interesting is, if I'm not authentic to who I be from the beginning, and don't value who I be from the beginning, then I'm going to go ahead and like conform. I'm going to people please. I'm going to do whatever I can. But relationships aside, like people do this all the time in every situation. And they're kind of like compromising themselves. That's what it's not even just like the rules of the world. They're compromising who they be for that. And I think that leads to so many different problems in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. Because like you said, they're shifting around, they're tossed around by it. Yeah. And so they never know who they are, who they be. Yeah. And you're right, that's where most of the problems are in the world.
And it's sad, because you had this amazing shift of like living I don't know how to say the word, inauthentic, like just not an authentic life in the beginning when you were working at as a financial analyst, and living in a box that you've created for yourself, a mental prison based off of other people's expectations. And then that lifestyle got you physically sick.
Right.
Because your soul, who you be, was rejecting it.
Yeah, it was so repulsive.
So repulsive that you got yourself sick, right? And now you're on this path of pure authenticity and power, so much so that like out of you came books that you didn't even know you could do, right? But I'm like, oh, I guess I'd be an author. You know what I mean? But the truth is how can other people find who they be?
That's a good one. One of the ways I see is to first become aware of it. Yeah. Become aware that the stuff they're doing is not who they be. Yeah. So awareness is number one. Number two is the ability to separate yourself from the stuff. Yeah. So maybe you work this job and you have to do it and you choose to do it, and that's great. But know that you are not the job. You're not the employee or employer or whatever. You are not that role. Because when you can separate yourself from it, then you can do something with it. Then you can find out who you be without the baggage and without the emotion of all of that. And then the third piece is to clear the emotions. Like, do you feel lack? Do you feel anger, resentment, bitterness, frustration, rage, or any other negative emotions? And then release those emotions. And then you become very, very clear without the baggage, without the rocks in the backpack. Then you can look at yourself more clearly.
Yeah.
And actually see who you be.
Well, it's interesting. I remember I had this experience in high school, and I wasn't like a overly religious kid back then, but I had this experience that I'm like, wow, that was really bizarre. I was walking from one class to another, and there's like a whole bunch of people, students surrounding me, everything. We're walking, and I was walking down some stairs, and I had like this crazy out of body experience where it was almost like I was seeing myself as like an avatar almost, right? Mm-hmm. Walking down the stairs. And as I was seeing it, and I'm like, wait, where am I? Like, where am I at that I can like witness from like a third person perspective? And then I remember thinking like, that is a role that I'm playing, the role of being a student,
yes.
The role of, going with the masses to a different class. But like, that's not entirely all of me.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
That is a great example, because that's what most people are in and stay in the rest of their whole life.
Yeah.
And you seen that and being able to like step out of that and look at that going, wow, that's not me. I know I'm performing that role, but it's not me.
Yeah.
And tell me this, did you take that one step further, or when did you actually see that all the stuff was not you?
It's interesting because back then I wasn't, I just thought it was a really interesting experience, but I didn't really like put it together. But years and years later, I remember being an actor, going and doing different roles and stuff. I'm like, well, those are different characters that I'm playing, but I realized like that's not me. That's a character I'm playing.
That's a great example.
In a role, in a scene, in a movie, whatever it is, but that's not entirely me. And I got to this point, I remember when I was going to an audition, it was in LA, and I remember like laughing because I was like, wow, I am really, really happy right now. But I knew it did not matter what happened in the audition. It didn't matter at all. I didn't care what the outcome was because I was so happy right now. I was so fulfilled right now. And that's when I realized, okay, this dream of being an actor, this dream of like carrying this certain type of role out, whatever that is not what is fulfilling me.
Aha.
Who I be is what's fulfilling me. And then you realize like your state of being itself is the fulfillment that you need, that you're looking for.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yep.
Yeah. And it was like an eye-opening thing. And it's been kind of like re-emphasized over and over and over again, because people think that they are defined so much by what they do.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Their jobs and stuff. But I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who he was saying like, yeah, I've just been doing this and doing that, and kind of filled with some anxiety. And I remember thinking, I was telling him, dude, I honestly think when you realize your relationship with God or source or whatever you want to call it, for me, God, you realize that no matter what you do in life, it will never be greater than who you already are.
Precisely. Yes, absolutely.
And so that was like a huge thing for me. So I want to ask you now, one of the big parts of the podcast is talking about lemons to lemonade, right? Like a moment in your life where it was a hard lemon and you turned into lemonade. And for me, I think, well, that was probably your awakening experience, right? But a lot of people are going through that right now.
Yes.
And COVID didn't help things any, in a sense, it kind of brought to their forefront some of the things that they've been hiding, because now they've had to like reset their lives.
Yeah.
What do you think could help people feel greater joy in their life?
I think probably the number one thing is that realize that what they're going through is not who they be. It's not who they are. Like you with acting.
Yeah.
There's you, and then there's the roles you play.
Yeah.
When you realize that, and when people realize that they are not that. So I think that's huge.
Yeah.
And then they can start dealing with their stuff, knowing that their stuff is not their stuff.
Well, it's interesting because dealing with their stuff is not who they are, but it's what they've collected.
What they collected, yeah.
Right? So how do they do that? How do they deal with their stuff?
So imagine it's like rocks in a backpack.
Okay.
So you're not the backpack and you're not the rocks. So being aware that the rocks, that you're carrying a backpack, and that's all the baggage, that's the emotional baggage, mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever. Yeah. And then gaining the tools to get rid of that. And there's a whole bunch of tools. Yeah. Some people will write down their emotions. Some people will meditate and pray and visualize. And some people, there's a thing called emotional freedom technique where they use tapping sequences, or there's a whole bunch of modalities. Yeah. But the whole point is that they can get rid of the stuff. And so, like, say they see something on the news and it creates fear in them or something like that.
Yeah.
That they realize, oh, I am not the fear. I am me, and that's eternal.
That's eternal.
And so it doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
No matter what the world does, and the world's kind of going crazy right now.
Totally.
But when they realize that they're not the stuff, then all of a sudden it becomes very freeing.
It's a very freeing thing, right?
Yeah.
When we have conversations on the phone, one of the things that you always ask me is like, if I share these things with you, how will it affect you? You know? And it's a great question because, and a lot of times I'm like, I don't think it's going to really affect, it's not going to trigger anything in me, right? And it's interesting because a lot of people get triggered and it's a massive trigger. My brother, he and I were having a conversation the other day because his really good friend, who they're in a band with and stuff, sometimes I don't know, just things have happened in his own life that have like triggered him in some capacity, right? And he gets really upset and angry because of it. And it's interesting because we were talking about that, and it's like every person has like those type of triggers.
Yeah.
So when you deal with triggers and they start coming up, it's like they're not pleasant people to be around sometimes, right? But how do you think we can deal with our own triggers in a very constructive and peaceful way?
That's a really good one. My recommendation would be have the tools that you're practiced with in advance.
Yeah.
So like, okay, I know I'm going to have some triggers that come up in just normal life, but there could be some additional stuff to get blindsided by and go, oh, wow, what do I do with that?
Right.
But then, oh, I've got my tools too. And so I'm used to, oh, I'm feeling some emotion right now. I'm going to let that go and use your tools. So if you have the tools in advance and you're practiced with them, then when that comes along, and it's going to come along, everything.
It will come along.
Yeah. Then you're like, hey, I'm used to this. I know how to do it. I've had experiences with this before. It might be a totally different trigger. So, oh, I didn't know I had that trigger. I thought I cleared that one.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm still in there. Okay, clear it out. And then once you're free of it, it's like, okay, I'm good. Now let's move forward again.
Yeah. It's like tactical training for your soul.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And you're like, once you have those tools, then you're able to like kind of revisit and keep going and help clearing. So I actually don't have too many more questions. I want to wrap things up, but with all of the things that you're learning and with the way the world is going, what is your greatest fear right now?
My greatest fear would be, are you saying for myself or for others?
For you.
For me?
And then we'll talk about others.
For myself is that I've been blessed with so much and not being able to help to get out of me to people what I've been blessed with to help them.
Yeah.
Because like a big part of my purpose, not who I be, but my purpose now is to take what I've learned and experienced and help other people. That's kind of my purpose and mission.
See, I like that because you just distinguish the difference between who you be versus your life's purpose.
Yeah. And they are separate.
They are separate.
And I've been blessed with so much, and that's why we've got 3 more books in the works right now. There's Golden Mountain, there's Golden Crystal, and there's Golden Diamond that are in the works right now. And I really want to get out more of this information to people, because the need is so great right now.
Yes.
And it's going to get even more so in the next few months and years.
Yeah.
And so that's one of my, I don't know if I want to use the word fear, but concerns, big concerns, is that I won't be able to get it out to people in a big enough way, in a broad enough way, in time.
You know, one of the things I love about you is like you just have no ego. You just want to serve. You want to help people, and that's just who you are. And like I remember connecting with you like that and feeling like, wow, like that's why I resonate so much with you, is because it's not about you. It's about the message, and it's about helping elevate people.
Right.
Okay, the truth is the world is getting crazier and crazier. I see more and more divisiveness in the news. There's like new things dividing us. I'm like, wow, I didn't even think that was a thing. That now that's dividing us, you know? So in those circumstances, when people are like being bombarded with all of these different divisive tools, how do you stay grounded and who you be?
I have to apply the principles that I teach myself every day.
Yeah.
So I'll do emotional clearing, 12 to 20 times a day. I have to do my own self-maintenance. I'll go out and walk around barefoot in the grass.
Yeah.
Even in the wintertime, I'll be walking around in the snow barefoot. And my kids are going, whoa, he's weird.
Yeah.
So self-maintenance and taking care of myself so then I can help other people better.
No, I love that. I absolutely love that. And what encouraging words would you give to people, like especially like as they're getting familiar with your books? What encouraging words would you give to them?
I would say find out who you be and then just enjoy life, because really we're all kind of actors.
Yeah.
And who we really be behind the scenes is that eternal self. And might as well, you can choose to have a hard life and you can choose to have a fun, enjoyable life. Might as well choose a fun life, enjoy it, and see the best in life, even if the world's going crazy.
Yeah.
Really enjoy yourself, enjoy the world, enjoy your relationships, and have fun as best you can.
Man, Rex, I love that. I love that. And I've got one last question for you.
Okay.
And this last question is, knowing what you know now, what would you tell the financial analyst? What would you tell that one that was in the box just thinking this is all there is? You know?
The me of 2003?
Yeah.
I would, that's funny you bring this up. I would tell me that it's okay. Things will work out. Let go of the fear. It will work out good. In fact, it'll work out better than myself 18, 19 years ago can imagine. And to have fun, enjoy.
Yeah.
That's what I would tell me.
That's perfect, because the truth is, when you let people just know, like, hey, it's okay to relax, you know, it's gonna work itself out. And like God, source, universe has a great way of like saying, hey, this is where you are and I'm gonna help you get back to being who you be. You know what I mean? So I think it's awesome. Well, how do people get these books?
Well, right now they're available on Amazon.
Okay.
I also have my website. It's called 3 Peaks Institute.
Okay.
And then we sell them through what's called the Ascension Academy.
Okay.
And I think we'll put a link on this when we're done.
Let's make a plug really quickly for the Ascension Academy.
Yeah.
What is that?
So the Ascension Academy is the online training. We were initially going to have it a physical facility, but then all this COVID stuff. So what we decided to do is take it all online. I've taken the material that I've gone through in my classes and we've put it online. Okay. And so a person can either like watch one little topic or a whole series and get all the information as fast or as slow as they want to. It's
funny because one of the people in the online academy happens to be in my church ward, you know?
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I remember wait a minute, I think I saw you, and we were kind of talking about it. But it was interesting because the online academy is great for people that can do it at their own pace, their own schedules, and can help elevate themselves from wherever they're at, you know? Yeah. So I think that's awesome. Guys, honestly, please check out these books. I can't recommend them enough because they're a fun adventure and they will help inspire you. And Rex, seriously, thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
This has been so awesome. Any last words, or should we wrap it up?
Nope, I think we're good.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks so much for listening to the Lemonade Stand podcast, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use to be alerted when we release new episodes. We'd also love to hear your feedback in the reviews, and if you or someone you know has an awesome Lemonade Stand story, please reach out to us on social media and let us know.